So today we're going to make coconut miso curry. Yummy. Hi. So there's no way to sugarcoat it. Cooking is a lot of effort by the time you figure out what you want to make and get the ingredients, prep them, actually do the cooking, not to mention the cleanup. So I get that it is a challenge for a lot of moms to fit in maybe even cooking one meal a week. But I hope to give some tips and ideas for things you can do that are easy at home. So when you do get the inclination or the time to cook a meal for your family, you feel like you've got a little support in the process. I would like to share a fun thing that I learned at culinary school first, which is that if you've got a slippery cutting board without feet on it, you can wet a paper towel and place it underneath your cutting board, and then there's no sliding around. So today we're going to make coconut miso curry, and it's very flexible. So you can add whatever vegetables you want, whatever meat you want, and it only requires a few ingredients from your fridge and pantry. One ingredient that I want to highlight that kind of makes this dish is white miso paste. And this is great because it has a lot of flavor in it already. It's kind of an umami flavor, so you can actually sub it for recipes that call for anchovies. And it keeps in the fridge for a really long time, so it's not something that you're gonna have to throw out right away if you don't use it. You can use it just to make a simple miso broth, soup broth for your kids, and usually my kids like that when we go to Japanese restaurants. So we're using that today. And then we've got garlic, ginger. I'm using bok choy, but you can use spinach or whatever vegetable you've got on hand. Sliced red onion, cilantro, basil, if you like those. And I'm going to do salmon today. And we're gonna do it pan fried, but you can also make this really simple by just cutting up the salmon and throwing it right in the broth to cook to make it very easy. And then we're gonna serve this over white rice. You could also serve it over soba noodles, whatever you like. So first we'll start with the base of our broth, which is the garlic, the ginger, and the miso paste. So this recipe calls for sliced garlic. And the reason being that we don't want to chop it is because it will burn faster if we mince the garlic. So we're just going to slice this thinly. Every time I slice garlic, it makes me think of Goodfellas when they're in the jail and one of the guys is using a razor blade and to see how thinly he can slice the garlic. And when you are looking for a good clove of garlic, you don't want to see any of the green in the center. The green means that it's already gotten a little bit old, so it's time to get some new garlic. And the better the ingredients you start with, the better your food's going to turn out. So I'm kind of a stickler for good ingredients. All right, so we've got our sliced garlic, and then we're going to mince some ginger. So the way I like to do this is I just take a nub of ginger and peel it with a vegetable peeler. And then first I'm going to slice it lengthwise into these kind of long discs. And then I'm going to stack those on top of each other and go the other way, making matchsticks. And then I turn it back around this way, and then you've already got your minced ginger. All right, so that's ready to go. Oops, I missed a slice. Let's get that one done. Sometimes they stick to the back of the knife there. All right, so those are done. And then we've got red onion. And I just wanted to show you a little bit fancier way of chopping the onion rather than just going crosswise. You can make these sort of prettier little strips if you just come in at an angle all the way around. And then you just cut the end off. And then you've got these more even pieces. And they look prettier. And doesn't take any more time. All right, so now let's go on over to the stove. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned the coconut milk that's also going in the recipe. So this is just regular coconut milk. I found this kind that's simple. It doesn't have any of the guar gums or anything in it. And anytime I can find something that doesn't have added preservatives or stabilizers, I think that's a good thing. So we'll take the cutting board over to the stove here. I'm gonna turn up the heat and add a little bit of olive oil to the pot. It's about a tablespoon or two. And then we're just gonna add the garlic, onions, and ginger. Get a little bit more of my onions. So it's about a medium onion, 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, and about an inch-sized nub of the ginger. And we're just gonna let those soften. So softening means that the onions are just gonna turn a little translucent. And you don't want your heat too high so that you don't burn the ginger and the garlic. Medium heat. And in the meantime, I've been making white rice, which is ready to go. But like I said, you could also serve it over soba noodles. Soba noodles cook super fast. It's only about 4 minutes. And those can be served hot or cold. Or you could even just throw noodles right in the broth and cook them in the broth. All right. Give it another minute here. And the next thing we're going to add is the miso paste. And the miso paste, we're just going to kind of break up and spread around. But it's important to get this caramelized. So it's going to give it a lot of flavor. There are some sugars in the miso. And once those start to get some color on them, that's when the flavors are really gonna come out. So you can see already at the bottom of the pan that it's starting to brown up a little bit. I love these non-stick pans made by Our Place and Caraway. Both of them are really safe. They don't have all of the chemicals in them, and they are such a breeze to clean. It's actually a joy to clean these pans when you're done cooking because everything just comes off so easily. All right, so we're gonna give this another couple of minutes. Keep stirring it so that you're getting some of those bits off the bottom. I'm gonna do this for a couple of minutes. Really let those flavors develop. All right, so now stand back because this might splatter a little bit, but we're gonna put in the coconut milk. Okay, good. So just the whole can, and then I'm gonna use the same can, fill it with water. And then just add another little bit if we need to. So this is going to stick on my spoon. This is just gonna come to a boil. And then you can really just change, change how much water you add to this to make it the consistency that you like. If you want it a little runnier, you can add more water. If you want it to be thicker, then add less. And the miso already has salt in it, so you do want to be careful about adding any extra salt at this point. I would wait until you get it the consistency that you like and then see if it needs more. All right, so that's pretty much done. I'm going to add just a touch more water so that I don't waste any of this coconut milk in here that's still at the top. All right, so here's our salmon. If you were going to add this right into the pot, then you would just cut it up into little cubes at this point, and you can just throw it in there once the broth is simmering, right with your vegetables. And then the vegetables, when you add them, depends on what kind of vegetable it is. So something like bok choy or kale might take a little bit longer to cook, but spinach you can just throw in at the last minute. But we're doing this pan fried today, so I'm going to turn up the heat on this pan over here. A little olive oil, getting the pan nice and hot. You don't want it to start smoking though, because then that means your oil's burning. I'm going to start with these spaced down. So that's the sound that you want, that little sizzle right when it hits the pan. And then we're not going to touch them. We're just going to let them caramelize. I might move this oil in the pan around a little bit just so that they get nice and browned. But we're just going to let them do their thing. So now I'm going to season the other side of the salmon. All right, so the broth has started to come to a simmer, and I'm going to add in the vegetables. And the bok choy doesn't take too long to cook, but a few minutes. I like a lot of vegetables, but you can add in whatever amount you want. And if you have little ones that are particular about their greens or any vegetables at all, you can also just strain out some of this broth either before or after you add the vegetables. And then they just get the yummy broth without the stuff in it that might be off-putting to them. All right, so everything is done now. We'll plate it up. This is the rice, and I love this recipe for rice from Ina Garten's book, Go To Dinners. It's really easy to make, and it turns out well every time. I think when I make rice in the rice cooker, it always ends up a little too mushy, and hers just turns out perfectly. So I really recommend that. It's just 1.5 cups of rice, 2 cups of water, tablespoon of butter, 2 teaspoons of salt. You bring that to a boil and then reduce to a simmer, cover exactly 10 minutes, turn off the heat, let it rest 3 to 5 minutes, and you're golden. And look, it's so fluffy. All right, so I'm gonna put some rice in the bowl. And then a little bit of the broth on top with the veggies. Piece of salmon. And then if you like cilantro, a little sprinkle of cilantro on top. Basil would be great. Lime wedge. Squeeze, oop, slipped away from me there. We'll squeeze on top. Set it off to the side, and it's done. All right, let's taste it. Yummy. Excited to try it. All right, let's give it a try. Get a little bok choy. That turned out really well. Super simple, ready in about 20 minutes. Not really counting the prep and cleaning time, but it's easy and flexible. Remember, you can change the vegetable. You can change the protein, you can change the starch to whatever you've got lying around. But hopefully you found some inspiration in that easy miso base with just some red onion, garlic, ginger, and coconut milk. If you have any simple recipes like this, I would love to hear them. Leave them in the comments. And one more thing, this also makes for great leftovers because you've got that big pot. So you have something for you to eat the next day at lunch. Moms need to take care of themselves.